What's up everyone, my name is Kelsey, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing part 2 of my June wrap-up. Okay, so in June I read a shit ton of books and decided to break this into 2 videos so it wasn't 30 minutes long and super intimidating. Part 1 is already uploaded, so I'll link that in the cards if I can figure that out. Also, in my original video, what the fuck is that noise? My upstairs neighbor has decided to vacuum like right when I started filming this. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully he's done vacuuming and doing laundry and every other noisy thing. So, in my part 1 video, I filmed it a few days before the end of the month and I thought I would finish another book, but I didn't. So, the actual numbers for June are total of 16 books, 1 middle grade, 8 young adult, 7 adult, 0 1-star, 1 2-star, 6 3-star, 5 4-star, 4 5-star. For genres, 2 fantasy, 4 sci-fi, 4 contemporary, 4 crime thriller, 1 nonfiction, and 1 poetry. So, to the books. Book 9 was Real Queer America by Samantha Allen, which is a nonfiction book where the author, Samantha, went on a kind of cross-country road trip through red states in the US and interviewed and had talks and discussions with queer people living in those states. It was fantastic. I really love this book. It was, the writing is great, and she has a really good way of, how do I want to say this? Making stories and interviews and travels feel really engaging. That's a good word for it. And it was also very comforting and hopeful. I live in a swing state, which is very red right now. But the people she talks to and the things she talks about just gives you a lot of hope for living in the more conservative parts of America. It was great. Totally recommend it. 5 stars. Next, I read, books 10, 11, and 13 are part of a series. The Foxhole Court, The Raven King, and The King's Men by Nora Sakovic. And I read these because, for some reason, there's a lot of fandom crossover from the Raven cycle into, I don't even know the name of this, the series name, but into these 3 books. And after reading it, I don't really understand why. They're so different. So, Foxhole Court is about this fictional sport called Exie, which it sort of seems like lacrosse meets handball meets field hockey. It's very confusing, and I didn't really understand, I don't read about sports, so I wasn't that into the sports sections. And then it follows our main character, who's our perspective character, Neil, who's been on the run with his mom for years, and after his mom dies, he's recruited by this collegiate level Exie team, and he decides that he can risk staying still for a while in order to live his dream of playing Exie. In addition to the sports stuff, there's also mafia stuff and crime and shitty human beings that are violent and keep people as pets, and I'm very confused about the crossover. And I guess some of it is because the main character, Neil, is described as, throughout the series, he gets in a relationship with another man, and he's described as demisexual, so there's some rep crossover. Maybe that's it. I don't. Anyways, pros for this book are that it was so dramatic, a level of drama that's only met by daytime TV soap operas from the 90s, just one thing on top of another, and there's no breaks, and just very intense. And then there are some parts where the writing is really impactful, and it's just done really well, and dramatically well. So it was super fun to read. My cons for this book are that these books, I guess all 3, are, I don't know, everyone is shitty. It's this Exie team that they're on, the coach or whatever makes it a habit of finding people are really good players that need a second chance at life. So this team is made up of people that have really shitty pasts and kind of do shitty things all the time. And there's this scene in the first book that was it involves drugging someone, and I found it horrific. In no way are any of these relationships healthy. Also, I think the demisexual rep has been confirmed by the author, but I have a lot of problems with it because it's sort of said in the book that Neil, who's the main character, he says he doesn't swing, meaning he's not interested in men or women, but he describes being interested in women in the past. But because they were on the run and his mom didn't want him to get attached to anyone, she literally physically beat it out of him. So I wouldn't call that demisexual. That's traumatization. Like, I don't know, just strange. Like, fun to read, but don't take it seriously. So book 12, which I listened to as an audiobook, is Ask the Passengers by A.S. King. And this is a young adult contemporary about a girl who has figured out that she likes girls and doesn't know how to tell anyone. She has kind of a secret girlfriend, but she doesn't want to come out. Her family was originally from New York, and then when she was 12, I think, they moved to this really small town because their family thought it would be better for them to grow up in a small town. But you see from our character's perspective that the small town life is really not working for her. She has a lot of problems with the way people act and the hypocrisy in people's actions, and she's afraid to come out, and she's afraid of what, she's not really afraid of what people will think of her, but she doesn't want to deal with the fallout from it. So pros for this book. The main character's voice felt really genuine, and I enjoyed her perspective. There's also, the title of the book, Ask the Passengers, comes from like this thing she does to relax, where she lays on a picnic table in her backyard and looks up at the planes flying over and like imagines the passengers' lives. So there are sections in the book from random perspectives of people on the plane, and I love those sections. There's also some discussion of like physical consent between people that are already in a relationship, which I enjoyed. And of course, there's like a ton of societal criticism. Cons for this book are, there are a couple spots that are like a little bit like cheating. Like, I can't say exactly because the main relationship isn't like a serious relationship. They never say anything about being monogamous, so it just felt weird to me, and I didn't like that. And then also, there's a conflict with the main character and her friend in this book, and I feel like they had a big fight about something, and I feel like the friend was forgiven too easily. I have this problem in a lot of young adult contemporary books. Maybe I just hold grudges more than other people, but like their friends do shitty things, and they're just like, okay, we're all good now. Like, so I ended up giving this 4 stars. Still really enjoyed it. Book 14 was Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. This is a young adult sci-fi, and I started listening to this audiobook, but I wasn't really enjoying the narration, and then it got returned to the library, so I just picked up the physical book instead. It's set in a future world where people have superpowers, and if you don't have superpowers by the time you're 17, you'll probably never get them, and if you do, then you go to this school to develop your powers and become a hero for the superhero league, so that you can protect the cities. So our main character, whose name I can't even remember now. I'm not gonna remember. Anyways, she's bisexual, and she's also Chinese, Vietnamese, American. I'm pretty sure. So it follows her as she's approaching her 17th birthday, and she's pretty sure she's not going to develop any powers, even though her older sister can fly. Her parents both have superpowers, so she's disappointed to be the only one without powers. And she decides to take an internship to make some extra money and also to kind of prove her worth to herself. But the internship she takes is for a villain, the villain in their city that her parents are always fighting against. So there's some conflict there. It's also, there's a little romance between her and another girl at her internship, which I really loved. So my pros for this book are the romance, which I enjoyed. And I thought it was well-paced and well-developed. And I really liked all of the characters. Our main character has 2 friends, and I think they're both great. Bells is my favorite character, and I think he's the main character in the next book. Not your villain? Yeah, Not Your Villain. So I will be reading that one. But my cons for this book are that it reads pretty young. Like, the characters are 17, but I feel like the reading level is more like 14, 15, which is fine. It's just not something I personally enjoy. And then the plot is very simple. Like, the conflict itself didn't take a lot to figure out, and there wasn't really a resolution at the end. Obviously, this is a series, but it felt more like the start of the conflict rather than being a part of the conflict, if that makes sense. So I ended up giving it 3 stars, but I will read on in the series. Next is Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a middle grade contemporary about our main character, Ivy, whose family's home has just been destroyed by a tornado, so they're displaced from their home. And at the same time, Ivy is realizing that she is getting crushes on girls instead of boys. She's worried about what that means for her and how her family will feel about it, especially since she overheard a conversation her sister and her sister's friend were having, and it sounded like her sister would be upset about it. So this book was great. Okay, so pros for this book are that Ivy is so sweet and really realistic. She's only 12 and she reads like 12, and it's just such a good coming of age story and like a finding yourself. I mean, she's not really coming of age, she's only 12, but it felt so genuine, that age group and the parallels. I mean, this is middle grade, so the parallels are simple but really well done and interesting between, you know, the struggle of losing her home and the struggle of finding herself. Like, Ivy is also an artist, so there's a lot of talk of how she sees things in her mind, and I just thought that was great. I don't really have any cons except that it felt kind of long. There are some parts that kind of dragged out, or like some things that could have been edited down, I feel like. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. Really loved it. I don't usually read middle grade, but it was just so good. So my last book of June was Last Seen Leaving by Caleb Rowerig, and this is a young adult thriller about our main character. Again, I don't remember his fucking name. I should really write the names down. Anyways, it's about our main character, a boy. His girlfriend breaks up with him because she is kind of realizing that he is not into women. And he is also trying to face the fact that he's not into women. But after she breaks up with him, a few days later, she has gone missing. So he is under suspicion, but he also wants to find out what happened to her, because despite their relationship problems, they've known each other for years and they're best friends. So the story is about him investigating. And also there's a romance, of course. So pros for this book are that I feel like it did a really good job balancing like the thriller aspects and the more contemporary aspects of like the recognizing sexuality and the romance. It was also like the middle was really interesting, well paced and suspenseful, and it was an entertaining read. But my cons are that I hated the ending. I hated it a lot. And it felt completely unrealistic and also like a horrific thing to do. And I feel like we were supposed to be happy about this thing that happened, but I definitely was not, because I feel like there were so many better ways that the situation could have been handled. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but it just wasn't. And they are 15, 16-year-olds, so maybe they're just not thinking of the logical way you could do things. But I hated it so much. And it felt like the end situation that we were supposed to be like, oh, a resolution, was actually worse than what we thought had happened. Like, the terrible things that could happen because of the end conclusion, or just like, I could not believe. So I gave this 3 stars because it was entertaining, but I had to knock off stars because the end was so bad. Okay, so that's everything I read in the month of June. If you read anything good this month, let me know, especially if it was some kind of queer rep, because I'm always looking for that. My TBR was like 30 books long, and I still have a bunch of books out from the library that I didn't get to. So I'm sure I'll be reading more queer books. I mean, I read them all year. Not that it matters. I don't need a month. I post book-related videos every Wednesday, so if you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to keep talking, you can find me on Twitter at Kelsey Reads, or on Goodreads at Kelsey Lynn Reads. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.